Hello?
There you go.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Bounthone Chanthalavong Wiese. I'm representing for Alliance for Democracy in Laos. You speak about national and international work together, but Laos is dependent from Vietnam. Vietnam control Laos everywhere, political, military, economy, culture. And we have now influence from China too, from economy. The Lao people don't have right to assembly, to media. The Lao government work together with Vietnam. They control the people in social media and so on. How can we have SDG in the future in Laos? The international aid is not to the people, but only to the Lao government. The corruption, official corruption in every level in administration. My question for you, how we can work for a Lao nation to independent from Vietnam and from China? How can we help for the people, for the human right to speak, to media, to assembly, and so on? We need SDG for Lao in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will take, thank you very much. And with that, I once again apologize to the colleagues on the panel. I think we've tried to prioritize voices from civil society over hearing ourselves. I say as I speak more, apologies. So thank you so much to all of you who contributed. It was very, very fruitful. And I'll turn over the floor to Antonia.
Thank you so much. So we've had a super rich conversation, and we've heard that we're about to embark upon a decade of, what was it, action and delivery, or was it delivery and action? Action and delivery. We've also heard that we're in a hangover phase after the happy adoption. We've heard that we don't live single issue lives, that if all the people discriminated on the basis of work and descent came together, you would make up the 7th biggest nation in the world. We've heard that privatization comes at the cost, that it drives inequality. We've heard that we're in the midst of an existential crisis, that the climate crisis is an intergenerational injustice. We've heard a lot about shrinking space. And we've heard calls for a systems approach, more attention to systemic issues, calls for new ways to measure progress, fight silos, calls for addressing the money more explicitly, for progressive taxation, for meaningful and constructive dialogue, for accountability. And unfortunately, the representatives of the UN that we had invited to join us at the closing cannot be with us. We invited the presidents of ECOSOC and the General Assembly. We invited the Secretary General himself. They cannot be here with us. We do know that there is somebody from the office of the President of the General Assembly, and we're very happy to have you here. I've also been pleased to see you take notes, so thank you for that. So what we've decided to do is do a closing of our own and invite some of our fellow activists, some of the voices that we think need to be at the heart of this conversation, to share just a few reflections on what we've heard here today. And I'd like to start by inviting Micah from the LGBTI stakeholder group.
Thanks, Antonia, and thanks, Dan, the troublemaker. You know, in one way, it's an impossible task to summarize and have a reflection right away to what we heard, because I think there was so much input and so much richness because of who we are in this room. And, you know, one of the things that I picked up, and I always pick up because of who I am and what I work with, and the agenda, you know, when we adopted it, it was such a promise of leaving no one behind. And I think we all got excited about it. But then the more I listened to it, the less I hear what it actually means. So who are we talking about? What challenges are we talking about? Today in the opening of the summit, I think I heard it so many times that I lost count. The problem is that I didn't hear any actions following it. There is no content in it. And I think it's not only on the government, on the decision makers, but also our own homework to think, who are we talking about? Do we know each other or the person sitting next to you? And what the challenges they face. And, you know, many times, and you also mentioned that we're so stuck in silos. And I think one of the reasons why we are so is because of structures that we are navigating. It's the laws, it's our lives, how it is constructed. So, I was joking about the binary of what you said, but this is the language that we operate within. This is what we need to neatly fit in, or not we are, punished by. So, and some of you that know me know that I'm not a big fan of binaries or norms, so that's why I'm here to disrupt the system, and I think we all do it in our own ways. So I would encourage to keep breaking those, and remember that we are not one thing. So just when you go back home today, just lay down in bed and think how many things you are at the same time, and how we can connect to each other based on that. And I guess I will just leave it to my other colleagues that we need to both transform how we work and reinvent how we work. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maika. And we'll move to Jose from the Persons with Disabilities Stakeholder Group.
All right, so thank you, Dan, and thank you, Antonia, for your great facilitation. Thanks for the great presentations made by the different speakers, and even more important, for the contributions from the floor. Allow me to be frank and direct as we are closing this session. When I was listening to some of the presentations, my first reaction was, well, we are again listening to the same things that we have been saying to each other for a long time. But then I realized that if that is what was happening, it's because it's part of the diagnosis. It's because it's part of our reality. And it's fine. We don't need to be concerned, but rather try to think what we are going to do from tomorrow on. Another conclusion is that many of the presentations and statements were trying to request more action for governments and UN officials. But the problem is that we didn't have a lot of government representatives and UN officials here. So we really need to think of how we are going to start doing something differently if we really want to reach out to more governments and UN agencies. And again, if we didn't succeed, or if we were not successful in getting those governments in this room, it's maybe because there are some structural issues that we really need to face and try to solve. But on the other hand, and I have been in quite a good number of HLPF and similar forums, I think today we have started a very good exercise, and that is starting to questioning ourselves, what we want to do, and what we are willing to do, and what is the commitments we are about to take when we leave this room. So when the youth questioned how many young activists were part of our own constituencies, or when Antonia asked the business and industry representative to participate and answer one of the questions from the floor, that is exactly the right direction the civil society representatives must take if we want to succeed in this 2030 agenda. So there is a lot to do, but it's also true that we have been doing a lot of good things, and we should also be proud of that, and of course, keep doing what we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. And then we'll move on to Francis from the Stakeholder Group on Aging.
Thank you, Antonia. Thank you, Danielle. And thank you, everybody, for the wonderful session we've had. My name is Francis Zainuddin, representing the Stakeholder Group on Aging. I want all of us to give ourselves a pat on the back for all that we do. Please remember that NGOs have had a long history of reaching out to those left behind. When governments have failed, NGOs have been there. When there is famine, NGOs have been there. When there is a health crisis, NGOs have been there. When there is conflict, NGOs have been there. When human rights have been violated, NGOs have been there. Sadly, some human rights defenders have been persecuted and some have died for defending the rights of others. We are there. NGOs know a thing or two about leaving no one behind. Let us be proud and not be depressed about what we do and what we have accomplished. So to governments, I say, we are not only watchdogs, we are also implementers, and we can also be partners. When I was young, at 18, I thought I could change the world. As a very much older person now, at 78, I still believe I can change the world. Even though I may not even be around in 2030. One thing I have learned is that we must be forever vigilant, and we must all exercise the power of the vote to ensure that all people of all ages everywhere can lead long lives with prosperity and dignity. Let us all work together to achieve the SDGs, and let us all be very proud of what we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. And with that, we have come to the end. I would, however, like to thank our colleagues from the Office of Intergovernmental Support and Coordination for Sustainable Development, because without you, where's Jordan and Gwilym and everyone? Without you, it wouldn't have been possible. So really, I'd also like to thank the person with the power to switch on the microphones. We think he sits there. And Dan and I would like to thank all of you in advance for the work that you're going to do over this decade of action and delivery, for your work continuing to disrupt things, continuing to be troublemakers, and continuing to challenge others and ourselves. Thank you so much for being with us today.